Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Still Processing Podcast, 76ers podcast, that is. I'm your host here, Zach Ciavolella, here with, as always, Justin Crosby. On today's pod, we're going to take a look into the Sixers' absolute demolishing, spanking, if you will, of the Los Angeles Lakers on Monday night at the Wells Fargo Center. We're going to take a look into the upcoming road trip for Philadelphia as well, and a Kelly Oubre update. All that and more on today's episode of Still Processing. Hello, welcome back. After a long hiatus, too long, we are back. Zach and Justin here with another episode of the Still Processing Podcast. Justin, how are you, man, after a great victory on Monday?
I'm still counting how many points the Sixers won by.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And I'll tell you this, so much. It's so much, in fact. It is the greatest point differential in a loss in LeBron James' entire career. It is the fifth greatest point differential in the history of the Los Angeles Lakers. And that even goes back. There was a fifth game tied with the Minneapolis Lakers. That's how far back this goes.
Right.
Absolutely a crazy beatdown. I mean, just what a night it was. What was your kind of general takeaway? And then we'll kind of break into some of the in-between takeaways here.
So the Lakers so far this season have been known for their defense. And I was expecting them to put up much more of a fight on defense. And we could talk about some of the guys who went off who may not normally go off or whatever the case may be. But regardless, it seemed like whatever action the Sixers wanted to get into, they got into with little or no resistance. And then they just hit the shots. But I was very surprised at the defensive effort or just how many points the Sixers were able to put up. Like, that was just very surprising with the Lakers having AD and some good defenders on the perimeter. As far as Taurean Prince is a solid wing defender for sure. I know Austin Reeves, he's a pretty good defender. But it just seemed like Sixers were able to do whatever they want offensively and just like assert their will completely from all aspects. Defensive rebounding stood out to me, but just an overall really good dominating performance, which, lately, it's been some close games. This was a good laugher.
Yeah, like you said, the Lakers this season, a lot of it's been known. They've been known for their defense, a solid overall defensive group, and a big part of that's Anthony Davis. Honestly, tonight, or rather Monday night, I should say, not the case. It just was a lot more free-flowing, relaxed. It just was kind of a casual scoring session for the Philadelphia 76ers. So really what a night for them. It all kind of started about 4 minutes into the game. That's when things really kind of kicked into Philadelphia's favor. Looking at the game, obviously Embiid picked up his second foul 4 minutes in. Just a couple really ticky-tack fouls. I mean, the second one especially, but both of them, honestly, ticky-tack is the nice way that I'll phrase it there. Did you see anything on either of those two plays? I mean, am I overreacting thinking that those were a little bit of an embellishment? Paul Reed would have different words to say about Anthony Davis, but am I wrong at all for thinking that?
I don't even really think it was Anthony Davis, to be honest. I just think the refs, I don't know, because it seemed like we were destined in the first couple minutes for Anthony Davis versus Joel Embiid showdown. And Anthony Davis in the beginning was living up to the hype as far as offensively, and Embiid started to get it going, and boom, 2 fouls. It's just like, okay, you guys aren't the show tonight. Like, they're expecting to see AD, because for the most part in his career, AD gets up for games against Joel Embiid. So I was looking for him to have one of those, back and forth good games, but then just to kind of take the one-on-one factor out of it, From a scoring standpoint, I think that's what the refs did, and but I think it helped the Sixers in the long run because then they went to zone 2-3 zone after that to protect Embiid, and the game changed from there.
I got stuck on mute there for a second. Yeah, Nick Nurse talked after the game. He was asked. I think it was Tim Bontemps who asked, but they did go to a 2-3 zone for at least a little bit at the end of the first quarter or midway through even. Uh, According to Nurse, part of that was, of course, compensating for Embiid's fouls. Another part of it was just kind of the general strategy that they had in the game. The Lakers are not a great shooting team. That's one thing that's been true about them for honestly over half a decade. It's a situation where you can implement that zone defense and you don't have to worry. I mean, the best way to break out of a zone is to shoot the lights out of the ball. That's not really going to happen if you're facing LA. So calculated risk on the part of Nick Nurse. Not really much of a risk if you ask me, and obviously protecting Joel Embiid as well. Really kind of the sensible choice there as far as what to do defensively, and it really paid off for the Sixers. Just an absolutely stifling defensive effort in the rest of that first quarter, and really from there on out for the rest of the game. But you mentioned Joel Embiid, obviously the player of the game for Philadelphia. I mean, despite the first two fouls early on, puts up a triple double in 3 quarters. Just incredible. What impressed you the most about Joel Embiid's game?
I mean, honestly, like the obvious one, I guess I would say is assist. Of course, moving the ball, getting 11 assists in 3 quarters. And maybe I'll save that for you to comment on. But for me, just the overall effort we're getting from Joel in general on the glass and last night, the offensive glass, like they just dominated the glass, the team. And Joel led the way. And when Joel was given that effort and that hustle and that drive to get those rebounds, I feel like the rest of the team crashes the boards hard too. And that's how you get a rebounding advantage of like 16 or 18, whatever it was, how many more rebounds they had over them. But what really impressed me, like, is just seeing the effort on the glass from him because we've known the last couple years he hasn't been the best on the glass. And maybe it was because it's a lot going on offensively for him. He had to carry such a load. But, it's really good to see, starting to see really some consistent play on the glass. And then against AD, who's athletic, smaller but athletic, and the backup, Jackson Hayes, who's same size and be and super athletic. So it was good to see that. And if he played the whole fourth quarter, he might have ended up with like 16, 17 rebounds anyway. So,
Oh, for
that was
sure.
really good for me really good for me to see.
Yeah, it was physical. It came easy, and that's really any aspect of the game that you're talking about for Joel Embiid. Obviously, as a scorer, it wasn't even his primary function out there or his focal point, I should say. And he dropped 30. On top of that, I think 31 by the end of it. On top of that, he was focusing on trying to dish the ball, but he wasn't pressing. He had a couple turnovers that were from trying a little bit too much on just a couple possessions there, but 11 assists really in a very neat game, all said and done from Joel Embiid, and then obviously the rebounds you mentioned as well. I mean, honestly, just a fluid, comfortable, easy game. And if he did play all 4 quarters, I mean, we saw what Paul Reed did in that fourth quarter. Imagine what Joel Embiid's going to do. So, really, just a fantastic game all the way around from Embiid. Is he back in the true, honest to goodness, true MVP conversation for you, Justin?
Yeah, but I don't yes is the answer to your question. But then I
That's
don't
didn't
think
sound so sure.
yes, but I don't like he's just not being talked about. So which is fine. And it is what it is. There are other guys, deservedly so. Like I've seen people talk about Tatum and of course Jokic, but I'm like, you know, Embiid is playing better than he was last year, and he's the reigning MVP. So it'll be interesting as we go down, Sixers record and stuff like that. It'll be interesting, but I definitely think he's back in the conversation. He definitely should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's hands down the case. Obviously, you hear names like Joel Embiid not often enough, as we just talked about, but Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum always finds his way into that conversation. If Embiid can continue to produce, obviously not quite at this level, that would be absolutely insane to see from a player, but something even close to this on a consistent basis. I think, yeah, he has a case to have that MVP case once again. So whether or not that's going to happen, time will tell. Not every game's going to be as easy for him as this one was against LA. He seems to get up more against LA, a little bit more excited. He talked after the game about LA used to be his favorite team growing up. He was a big fan of Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant meant so much to how he learned the game of basketball, and so while that is a fantastic story for when he plays LA and great motivation for him, if he can bring that level of engagement night in and night out, which he's, I think, done a great job overall this season, then yeah, you're talking about a guy who's going to be really on the high end of the potential MVP candidacy by the end of the year. So, and I want to take a break real quick just to say, anyone in the chat, let us know your thoughts, your takes on the game. Let us know how you're feeling after a 44-point victory by the Philadelphia 76ers against the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, just an absolute shellacking, I think is the word, really, when you're looking for one. But it wasn't just Joel Embiid, obviously, who really just ran away with it yesterday. Tyrese Maxey, once again, had another fantastic game. 31 points, 8 assists, 0 turnovers, which is something that we're getting really used to talking about with Tyrese Maxey. What really stood out for you, Justin, with Tyrese Maxey's game last night? And Justin, while you're expounding on that, let us know, everyone, what your takes are as far as what Tyrese Maxey was able to do.
Yeah, man. I honestly, aggressiveness from the start. Like, that's what we need to see from him. He's been recently, and again, he's developing into this point guard. So he's more been setting the table the first quarter. And then when Embiid's out the game, he kind of starts getting back into it. Then they kind of flow together, but aggressive from the start. And that's what they need. And I think Embiid is at the point where he's super comfortable with Tyrese being as aggressive as possible. And because it only helps him out. And, he just has to keep doing that. But like, I like the aggressiveness from the start. I like the fact that he's just shooting the rock, like, no matter what. And now, like, adding like movement shooting to his game now. Like, we seen him come up there, dribble handoff a bunch of times, just like shooting, right? Before is our stand still, catch and shoot threes. Then he's got to move, then the step back, and then everything like that. Now, like, you're telling me you're adding movement shooting to his game now, like running off pin downs in the corner, getting dribbling handoffs. Like, it's a problem for the rest of the league. I'm telling you now. Like, adding that to his game is so hard to guard the 2-man game, or just guard them in general, if he's going to be doing this consistently. And like we always talk about, he puts in the work. So when has he proved that he won't get better?
Yeah, it was funny talking about Tyrese Maxey put in the work. He was talking to the media after the game, and a story was brought up of him training with LeBron James, and which that alone is obviously he's a clutch representative, but it not just anyone trains with LeBron James. It does go to show how special this guy is. But the point of the story wasn't just that they were training together, but on top of that, Maxey and LeBron were supposed to show up at, I think it was 6 a.m. for this workout. Maxey showed up a little bit early, and then the next time that they worked out again, supposed to meet up 6 o'clock. LeBron was there at like 5 o'clock. He's already in a full sweat by the time Maxey gets there. He's dripping wet. Maxey's like, what have you been doing? So the whole point was just that, I mean, LeBron, few people work harder in the league than LeBron to maintain their level of play. And that's something that Tyrese Maxey has really picked up directly from. There's obviously that natural hard work and effort and competitiveness from Maxey, but he's picked up a lot of this from LeBron as well. He's had a great really example to follow in that regard. And so you're really watching a lot of that effort of greatness from Tyrese Maxey. And this is why, for him, as is the case now and has always really been since we saw that first leap that he took, the sky's the limit for this kid. I mean, people want to talk about, well, he's, and it's been this way at every stage. It's, oh, well, his jump shot really came along, can he really do this on a high volume? And then on top of that, next season he comes back, he's doing it on even higher volumes, keeping the efficiency. Oh, this is great, but can he get the scoring numbers up? Scoring gets into the 20s. Next thing you know, the conversation is, well, can he be a point guard? Can he really facilitate Next thing you know, he's averaging 6.9 assists per game, leading the offense for the Philadelphia 76ers. And on top of that, scoring more points than ever. So the sky is the honest limit for Tyrese Maxey. And I'm not going to put a ceiling on this kid because every time somebody does, he just smashes right on through it.
So I have a question for you while we're on Maxey. Just diverting a little bit. I know we're how many weeks into the season? A month, 6 weeks into the season, almost 6 weeks, whatever. I don't see the only guard I see playing better than him right now is Tyrese Halliburton, and maybe they're on an even playing field because I don't think they both have their different styles of games, right? But I'm seeing Maxey up there as literally one of the top 3 guards in the East right now. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm not trying to be a homer either. I'm just watching them play. Watching both these guys play, and I'm seeing 2 of the best, 2 best guards in the East right now. I know LaMelo was on the tear, but he's hurt now.
Yeah.
Darius Garland hasn't had a good start to the season necessarily. We haven't really been hearing anything about Donovan Mitchell. Jaylen Brown, is he a 2 or a 3? You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just popped in my head he's definitely one of those top 3 guards in the East, in my opinion, or 2.
Yeah, it's a great question. When you talk about the entire NBA, obviously you got guys out west like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but when you're kind of focused on East, and a lot of that conversation too kind of ties into the All-Star conversation, which obviously the Sixers are hoping that this is Tyrese Maxey's first year where he will be named an All-Star. But you look at some of these other guards, you mentioned Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell's having a Donovan Mitchell year, 27 points per game. He's doing it on relatively efficient shooting. He's been very, very good. But the thing that really sticks out to me, when we're talking about Tyrese Maxey and we're talking about Donovan Mitchell, is how comparative the 2 guys really are. They're within half point of each other average per game. Tyrese is shooting 46. Donovan Mitchell's shooting 45. They're both taking a little bit over 8 threes per game. The free throw percentage is very similar, 88.4 for Donovan, 89.5 for Tyrese Maxey. Rebounding, 4.9 for Donovan Mitchell, 4.8 per game for Tyrese Maxey. Really where you see a little bit of separation is Maxey's ability to facilitate. Now, Donovan Mitchell's no slump. He's averaging 5.3 per game, but 6.9 for Maxey. These are very similar players doing very similar things this season. And Donovan Mitchell's been among the elite guards in the Eastern Conference. When you're talking about a traditional point, Tyrese Halliburton has stolen away the competition. I don't think there's anyone on his level right now in terms of point guards in the East. But when you're talking about that general guard, I think it's Tyrese Halliburton. I do think Donovan Mitchell deserves a place in that conversation. And then the other guy is Tyrese Maxey. He's really put himself as a fixture there. There's been conversation about, Tyrese Maxey or Jalen Brunson. Brunson has also been fantastic. I expect his shooting to drop off a little bit at some point. He's shooting 47.2% from 3 for right now. I think we're 16 games into the next season. I just don't.
What volume is the question?
Well, that's the thing. It's on 6.8, so it's still solid. It's not as much as Maxey. It's still solid though. But when you look at what to expect over the rest of the season, for a guy like Brunson, the volume is a little bit higher than normal. The percentage is a little bit higher than normal. Last year, he averaged just under 5 at 42%, just about. So I think he probably evens out probably closer to around maybe 6 threes a game, maybe shooting about 44% or so. I think that it's another great year for Jalen Brunson. And if we're talking about 4 guards out of the East making the All-Star team, I think those are your 4 guys. LaMelo has had a fantastic season. Obviously, like you mentioned, he is now hurt. Unfortunately, that kind of takes his name out of the conversation. But the other thing, the difference between those 4 guards is winning. So LaMelo, as great as he's been this season, I'm not sure that you could really put him in that conversation in the first place. So for Maxey to already be among the top 3 guards in the Eastern Conference, and I'm forgetting Trae Young. That's on me. But even still, top 4 guards, I'm taking Tyrese Maxey over Trae Young. Trae Young is a very good player, but he is admittedly flawed. And on top of that, he's just not the shooter that Tyrese Maxey's proven to be. So if you're looking at 4 guards in the East making the All-Star team, that's obviously going to happen. I don't see how Tyrese Maxey's not among them right now. So it's going to be interesting to see going into the year. Everyone in the chat, let us know. Do you think Tyrese Maxey is an All-Star? Is he deserving of it? Is this going to keep up? Is this Tyrese Maxey, or is there something? Is there a regression to come? Is there another echelon that he's going to step on into? Listen, Maxey's just I think you can't bet against him at this point, but he's just a special dude doing special things. So it's great to see if you're a Philadelphia 76ers fan. And you talked about the dribble handoff earlier. The way that they run those DHOs between Maxey and Embiid is absolutely insane. And I want to say that Maxey's assists to Embiid ranked second in the entire. And I saw this stat. I can't remember who put it out there, so forgive me. A few different people did. I know. Tyrese Maxey has, or his assists specifically to Joel Embiid, it's the second most assists from player A to player B in the entire NBA. Joel Embiid to Tyrese Maxey, 12th in the entire NBA. So that 2-man game, that 2-man action has been fantastic between both of these guys. And whether they're running the DHO or whether they're running pick plays, it's been fantastic to see for the Sixers. It's been the key to this team's offense. And I think it's something that you're really going to have to continue to watch and hopefully they have that continued success as the team goes closer and closer to the postseason, because that's going to be the key. When you are, looking to run your offense in the postseason, I can't imagine that it looks much different like this for the Philadelphia 76ers, because this is your bread and butter. Last year, it was the simple pick and roll from James Harden to Joel Embiid, and Embiid feasted like that. But there were a few different flaws in it. One being that you just didn't have a lot of optionality. It was really just that one move. Not a whole lot of secondary actions, alternative actions that you can make. But when you're running this DHO with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid in the 2-man game, there's so much repetitive back and forth. And the entire time, you have other players who are making back cuts throughout the entire game. So this is a huge part of the reason why Joel has been so much more efficient as a facilitator. I think the same can be said to a degree about Tyrese Maxey. And Maxey's really perfected that pocket pass to Joel Embiid as well. So you're watching everything kind of culminate and come together in like a beautiful way. And it's I got to tell you, this kid is the perfect star to complement Joel Embiid. And to think that after all that this team's been through and the fans have been through, the Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, James Harden, and now we end up here with Tyrese Maxey, a player who honestly, the Sixers shouldn't have even had if not for Mike Muscala. And he is the perfect complementary star to Joel Embiid. It's absolutely insane. And Eric checks into the chat. Maxey's an all-star. I thought he was the second best player on the team, even during Harden's tenure. James Harden was very good last season. And I don't even think Eric's saying that he wasn't. But what this is that Tyrese Maxey is such a special player. He has been, even for years now, been getting better and better incrementally each season. And now he has the opportunity. Eric follows it up with a quick hitter here, talking about a coach who finally believes in him. And I think it's a little bit of everything. And I think you're talking about a coach who absolutely believes in him. The way that Nick Nurse talks about this guy is like you would never doubt that he has the utmost belief in Tyrese Maxey. But on top of that, he's given him a better opportunity in terms of the offensive scheme that they're running. And they're playing off of Joel Embiid perfectly. So you are putting him in a place to succeed. And not only that, but you're encouraging aggressiveness. Nick Nurse has talked all season long about how Tyrese Maxey needs to be more aggressive. He needs to be more aggressive. I've been telling Maxey, you need to be more aggressive. Tyrese Maxey then comes to coach and to Nick Nurse, and he says, Coach, I think I want to be a little bit more aggressive, because he for as great as Maxey's been, he's been a little slow to start in the first quarter. And he's starting to do that now as well. So there's really no cap that you can put on Tyrese Maxey. I'm rambling now talking about this great player who virtually I can't even say came out of nowhere, because Kentucky guards, they always find a way. But it's just been a true revelation for the Sixers, and it's super exciting moving forward. But as exciting as Tyrese Maxey was, as exciting as Joel Embiid was, they were not the only players that stoked excitement last night. And it's a bit of a surprise. You probably wouldn't have guessed these players going into the game. Pat Bev and Marcus Morris. Two guys, solid vets. They've been contributing all season long, and especially in Morris's case, maybe not on the court as much, but behind the scenes, a very big part of this team. Putting it all together on the court, just absolutely fantastic game. Both of them electric from three. What did you think about those vets' performances against the Lakers, Justin?
First, for Morris and from everyone who went to a public school in Philly, we all know him as Twin. But yeah, for him to have a like, this is finally a good homecoming moment for him. Just playing at home, having a good shooting effort, having a positive impact on offense. That's where they're going to need from him if he's going to be on the floor. I mean, we've seen him be a sixer killer for the Celtics, so we know he can shoot, right? But it's just, I think the inconsistency of his minutes have just kind of like messed with his offensive rhythm. So I think it was really good to see him, have that stint last night, knowing that things might change when Kelly Oubre comes back. But you never know. He still could play his way into more minutes as he's continued to do. Daniel House is out still. So there are minutes to be had for Marcus Morris, which was good to see. As far as Pat Bev, it was definitely good to see him hit some shots because they're definitely like just leaving him open and they don't care. And Pat Bev usually does more stuff, intangibles to kind of help the team out. But to be able to do it on the offensive end last night as well was a really good sight to see. We're not going to clearly get that every game, but if we can get this every 15 games, like a swing from Pat Bev like this, like that's going to help win the game. And, that was really good to see both those guys because they're going to be needed. It's a long season. Guys are going to be out. More minutes are going to be had, and they're going to need to be able to continue to step up. So it was good to see both of them, but specifically for Morris, that was really good to see.
Yeah, Morris, this is now his second game in three, where he's been pretty effective offensively. And he's gotten a lot of criticism, I would say fairly, for how he's produced, or rather hasn't, on the court in his early Sixers career. But it looks as though he's really kind of turning that around now. And if he's able to do that more and more consistently, I mean, he's not going to go 4 from 5 from 3 every night. But if he's able to kind of find that shooting touch that he's shown in past seasons, like you mentioned, I definitely think that there is a role for him. What exactly that looks like, I'm not quite sure, because the Sixers eventually will be welcoming back Kelly Oubre. But there is a place for him on this team, and even beyond his on-court contributions, there's a huge place for this guy off the court. And he, this season, has been so important to this Sixers team, even beyond what you can see. Nick Nurse was very complimentary of both Morris and Pat Bev after the game yesterday. One thing that he had to say about them was just talking about how great they've been, not only Monday night, how great they've been specifically over the last 5 or 6 days. He said that they've been a veteran presence in practice and film. They've been pushing everyone to really focus down and lock in. It's just so key to have those calming veteran presences. So to have them alongside Joel Embiid, to have them alongside Tyrese Maxey, and both Pat Bev and Marcus Morris are so vocal, so much more vocal even than Joel Embiid, who's not the most vocal leader. He's more of a, kind of do it on the court kind of guy. Tyrese Maxey, who has really improved as a vocal leader, but is still kind of finding his voice at 23. So to have these guys in here who can come in, who can, contribute as need be, but really keep the energy, keep the vibes up, it's super important. And the leadership from Marcus Morris has been his best quality. I talked to him after the game last night, and this quote that he answered back when I asked him about his leadership, I think it really shows someone who is not necessarily, I don't want to say he's satisfied in his reserve role because he's very accustomed to starting. But I think that he has kind of the right perspective on it and knows the place that he's currently in and how he can be the best player. A lot of that relies on being a leader. So I'll just summarize it real quick. He talked about how leadership comes naturally to him. He's been in the league for 13 years, always been professional, always been a leader. And he really just wants to help out the young guys in any way, any capacity he can use his voice in. And this is his words, but he has a high IQ. I actually would agree, and I think that you don't make it 10 plus years in the league without having a relatively high basketball IQ. So for him to be in the league for that time, you obviously build up that IQ. He mentioned he played for a lot of great coaches, including former Sixers coach Doc Rivers, of course. So that leadership, he says, just kind of comes naturally to him, especially, and this is where I'm putting into my own words, where he's at this point in his career. So it just really a great voice to have in the locker room. And who knows where he ends his season. That's one thing that obviously has been up to a lot of speculation. But it's absolutely, for now, a crucial source of leadership for the Sixers. And on to Pat Bev, Eric checks in saying Pat Bev and Nurse, best thing to happen to Maxey. Yeah, I think that they are both fantastic for Maxey. I think James Harden deserves a lot of the credit for Tyrese Maxey's development. He's been a lot more aggressive and confident, and I think a lot of that he does owe to James Harden. But Pat Bev and Nick Nurse are also huge sources of instilling that confidence in him. And I think that a lot of what you've seen, Tyrese Maxey is not a standout defender at this point, but you've seen improvement, which as long as you see, progressing improvement, I think that's all you can ask at this point. But he's been improving. I think a big reason for that is not only Nurse, but also, yes, Pat Bev. I think he's been a huge reason for that. So to have a player, we saw how Pat Bev improved the Chicago Bulls just by showing up last season. And then next thing you know, he's not there and they're falling apart again. I'm not saying that Pat Bev is the only reason for that, but there's something about this guy that just energizes teams. It energizes the players. It energizes even the fans. And these veterans, even if they're not putting up these double-digit scoring games, efficient shooting games every night, they are still bringing value to this team every night. And it's something that the Sixers have sorely needed for some time. And we haven't even talked about some of the other vets like Nico Batum, and Robert Covington. So just one of the deepest, most veteran-focused teams the Sixers have had. And I think that's a big reason for their success. Eric does bring up Kelly Oubre. We're going to touch on Kelly Oubre in just a second, and I want to get back to that comment as well. Before we do, we're going to touch a little bit on the upcoming road trip. So the Sixers, obviously, they had the one-game homestand, and they blew out the Lakers. But now they're going right back on the road for a couple games here, going to face the Pelicans tomorrow night. That is Wednesday night. And then the Boston Celtics on Friday. Heading into this matchup against the Pelicans, Justin, what is the key for you for this team moving forward?
I mean, heading into the matchup with the Pelicans, I'll just look at how they're going to guard Zion. He gave them a lot of trouble last season. A lot of trouble. Like the pick and rolls they were doing with, I think it was like PJ Tucker guarding them, and they were doing like pick and rolls with Valanciunas, and it was like getting Embiid in trouble a little bit too. So just curious to see how they guard Zion. I think that's going to be the key. Zion is still a very good player, very athletic, and can really change a game with his athleticism and defense and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how they guard Zion, who starts out on him, and how they decide to defend him. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And then also on the for the Sixers, outside of their defense, I'm thinking, I know McCollum might be back tomorrow, but just how they guard Maxey, who do they put on him? Herb Jones maybe, and just to see how Maxey can deal with length. And he's done it a little bit so far, but I think that speed is really going to be a factor. So it'll be like an interesting stylistic matchup between the two. So that's but I'm looking to see how they really deal with Zion.
Yeah, for sure. I think that definitely is. There's a lot of interesting sub matchups when you look into this, and everyone in the chat, let us know what you're looking forward to in this match on Wednesday. But Herb Jones, you mentioned when talking about Tyrese Maxey, Maxey has done well trying to circumnavigate those issues when playing against guys with length, but that's been kind of the obvious plan to try and stop him. When they played Cleveland a few nights ago, Dean Wade was on Maxey for a lot of the game, and he caused some frustration. And there was a lot of reason to be frustrated overall in that game. But Maxey, it's obviously going to be more difficult when you're facing a player with significantly more height and length than you. So especially one who can kind of keep up with you footwork wise, which Herb Jones has a tendency to be able to do now. Few players can really keep up with Maxey like that straight up, but if Herb Jones is able to stay in front of him, that really limits him. So one of the things that Maxey said that he failed to do against Cleveland when I asked him was that his shot from deep just wasn't there. His shooting just wasn't up to par for him. That's going to be the major focus, is working this two-man game with Joel Embiid, working a lot of these dribble handoff situations, trying to create that space, sinking those threes, and he's going to need a quality game from deep in order to truly thrive, at least as a scorer. Now, you mentioned Zion Williamson too. Zion, a lot of people remember last season against the Sixers is when he hurt his hamstring, and that obviously is a hope that does not happen again this year. But the reason I bring up that game is because the narrative or the focal point became Zion's injury, but not a lot of people, I don't think, remember what Zion was doing to the team before he got hurt. So in that game, Zion had played 28 minutes, put up 26 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. He was 10 of 12 from the field, 10 of 12. So that really is going to have to be a focal point for the Sixers, trying to figure out how to stop. Do you stop Zion? How do you stop Zion? And if you can't stop Zion, do you allow him kind of to get his and focus on defending a lot of those ancillary perimeter players? And ancillary is kind of an insensitive word, more so I guess I should say a lot of those support players, more those general role players. Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, obviously they're two of the top guys on the team. But if you limit them around the perimeter and you kind of let Zion more so feast on the inside, you may, and teams have tried this with Giannis Antetokounmpo against the Bucks, there are just certain players who they can be extremely dominant, but sometimes if you allow them to be almost too dominant, it takes away from some of the other offensive focal points of the team. And you're able to, especially if you are able to shoot from range that night, you're able to really find some solid success there. So it's going to be an interesting matchup to see. Like you said, again, CJ McCollum may play. That will be really interesting because how much of a run is he going to get against Philadelphia? His first game back from a collapsed lung. We'll see. But he is obviously an electric shooter, someone who you don't want to take lightly. After the Pelicans game, Friday night, they take on the Boston Celtics at the Garden, at the TD Garden there in Boston. This is a lot of the Sixers are playing Boston in the first chunk of the season. 3 games already. I mean, this is ridiculous. Like, I would say, can they stop playing Boston? But they're going to. They only have one more game. They're going to take off some time against playing Boston. But for now, one more matchup, until the new year. What is the key to beating the Celtics in Boston?
For me, it's not even about Tatum or Brown. It's about every single time Derek White just has the game of his life. Like, I think the Sixers do a pretty solid job on guarding their stars. Like, I really do. And I think that, Tatum's going to get his. He's really good. Brown is going to get his. He's good. KP, matchup problem as far as trying to bring Embiid out the paint. cool. He can definitely cause some trouble. But my thing is, it seems like Derek White and we could throw Horford in there too, but this season has been Derek White, like just doing everything in the fourth quarter for this team or doing everything, keeping them in the game when the offense is not going well. And I'm like, yo, is this guy gonna be the normal Derek White? Because he'll play the Sixers, have 20 and 8 boards and 6 assists, but then play San Antonio Spurs the next night and have 6 points. So I'm like, are we going to see a regular game from Derek White, or is he going to be the one to beat the Sixers again? Like, that's really the one thing I'm looking at.
Yeah.
The Sixers have proved before they could beat them. And I'm pretty sure they're not going to take this lightly. I mean, this has been it's not a rivalry, as everybody has said, but it's just they just go back and forth. And, I'm interested to see how they do it, and just how they take care of, if they can take care of business on the road. Like, I mean, they're gonna have to do it in the playoffs, no matter if it's Boston, Miami, whoever it is, right? So can you guys take care of business on the road? So that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah. Derek White, known Sixers killer. It's it's crazy. He is already one of the better guard defenders in the league. And then on top of that, he just catches fire offensively, and it is so unendingly frustrating. So, finding a way to effectively neutralize him on both sides, obviously that's a key. For me, the key is not even a member of the Celtics. For me, the key is Joel Embiid. It starts and ends with Joel Embiid. He needs to be focused. He needs to be engaged. And he's done a great job of that this season. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. But even more so than he has been in these other games, he needs to be locked in like he was against LA. Embiid has this ability to dominate the Celtics. And often it can get thrown off, when they're working some defensive tactics, putting like a Drew Holiday on him, for instance, whatever the case may be. But if Embiid can remain calm in those situations and really just let the game come to him, as is the case when he's at his best, he is going to be able to dominate this Celtics team. They are smaller. They are weaker than they have been in the past against Embiid. Defensively, he has to at least challenge Al Horford in the corner. That's the one note I have for him defensively. But offensively, I mean, I think we're talking about a potential 40-50 burger for Joel Embiid. Not that that's what they would necessarily need, but that's the type of dominant game that he's capable of having against these Celtics. And that just might be what ends up happening in order to actually seal this game. Tyrese Maxey has done a better job against the Celtics lately. I do not expect him to all of a sudden solve his troubles against Boston, but if he's able to perform, even I would say as well as he did in the last game against Boston, I think that there is enough of a support system around him with this deep Sixers team that they would be able to take this win in Boston, thoroughly upsetting these fans, going up 2-1 in the series, which I think would be fantastic for the Sixers team. Obviously, because Boston's number one in the Eastern Conference right now, and thus obviously first in the division. But on top of that, just the energy that the team would absorb from beating Boston on the road. I don't know if anything could be better for the Sixers at that point in time. So, actually, one thing that may be better for the Sixers, and this may even tie into that game on Friday because Nick Nurse said that you can't rule it out. The return of Kelly Oubre is coming sooner than a lot of us really thought. He's been at practice. He's yet to be a full participant in practice. Keith Pompey of the Philadelphia Inquirer asked earlier today to Nick Nurse about Kelly Oubre on this upcoming road trip. Nurse said Oubre is going to come on the road trip. He's not going to be playing against Memphis, or rather against New Orleans, I should say. He would not rule him out of playing against Boston, which sounds a little crazy, but what do I know? What do you think about the odds of Oubre playing on this road trip? and how great of an impact is going to be the Sixers getting Oubre back?
I don't think we'll really see him. I mean, I guess really it's the win. How's he, with the conditioning. But I don't think we'll see him. If they do, great. But don't, let him come back, make sure his ribs are cool and everything like that. But I think overall, the Sixers really miss Oubre. They miss his aggressiveness on offense, his ability to cut, his athleticism, like his ability to compete on defense. Like, I think they really missed it because those bench units not having a score, like Nurse had to change up the rotations and stuff like that to kind of make that work. And who knew that Kelly Oubre was going to be so integral to the Sixers? But I mean, it's a welcome sight. They'll definitely welcome him back in open arms, and hopefully he gets right back to it. Competing on defense and shooting the rock and having that confidence. He was one of those guys where like, yo, I'm gonna shoot the rock and I'm gonna go get a bucket. And he was very successful at it on his first couple games. Well, first, I don't know, 2 weeks with the Sixers. So, hopefully we get a chance to see that go back. And I don't think at this point, I think they'll bring him off the bench. I don't think he's going back in the starting lineup. I think Batum probably would have been starting anyway. So I think they'll just keep the stars the same, and then Oubre will be that sixth man off the bench, and he can shoot for his sixth man of the year award.
Yeah, I think Nico Batum starting was, I won't say always the plan, but probably shortly after he really got some time with the Sixers. I think that had been the plan. Kelly Oubre has been so valuable to the Sixers, like you said. His scoring is what everyone thinks of, but the Sixers defensively were a better team with Kelly Oubre. We're comparing 8 games with Oubre to 9 without. They had 2 more steals per game with Kelly Oubre. They had 1.5 more blocks per game with Kelly Oubre. Now, Oubre himself, is he racking up those stats? Not necessarily, but it's his athleticism and his willingness to compete 99 out of every matchup. He's been a great hustle guy for the Sixers, and that's been what's led to this improvement in team defense with Kelly Oubre. So I think that's something that they will really welcome back. And now you're talking about a lineup where, or not necessarily a lineup, but looking at this complete squad where you have guys like Pat Bev, D'Anthony Melton, Jaden Springer is going to get minutes. Kelly Oubre is thrown into the mix. Robert Covington, Nico Batum, Paul Reed, and then obviously Joel Embiid is the centerpiece there, the defensive anchor. I mean, you're talking about a squad that can start moving up these defensive rankings once they get Kelly Oubre back. So I think there's a lot to look forward to this season. I think that there's a lot to look forward to on this road trip even. I feel pretty good about the New Orleans game, if I'm being honest, just thinking about where this team is and thinking about how this team has looked under Nurse. It doesn't really seem like playing on the road has bothered them a whole lot. So it's all coming together. I mean, can I see it looks like I'm getting bought in again, I think that's kind of the case for everybody, is this team ready to compete? A lot of people are saying there needs to be an additional move made at the trade deadline. We'll see if the Sixers actually decide to do that. Certainly I would feel a lot more comfortable calling them a contender if they were to add a relatively big piece between now and the deadline. But for now, the Sixers are playing great basketball, inspired basketball. Hopefully that is the case moving forward. And listen, tune in Wednesday night to see what happens from there. And Friday night being the absolute, don't miss Friday night's game. I mean, against Boston, how could you miss it anyway? But that's going to be the game to watch there for sure. Justin, any thoughts before we head off for the night?
No, I'm just anticipating that Boston game, like you said. Good to see, and I'm really anticipating Kelly Oubre to come back and make an impact. So, but that's it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm starting to overlook New Orleans, and I just when I said that about Boston, I put a little bit of fear in my own heart about overthinking New Orleans now. I still feel very good about it, but you got to take it a game at a time. Just keep that in perspective. Kelly Oubre coming back obviously is huge for Philadelphia. I can't think of anyone who would not be looking forward to that. I know the Sixers certainly are. They miss him absolutely. But it's getting better. Things are getting exciting in Philadelphia. The mood in the Wells Fargo Center was fantastic, and it's really picking up for the Sixers. They're remaining competitive in a year where people thought it was a gap year. We were talking about before the season started. So definitely encouraging to see. But thank you so much. Don't trust Derek for the phone with assets. I hear what you're saying, Eric. I do absolutely hear you. We'll see what happens. I think he's earned a little bit more trust after this James Harden trade. So we'll see what happens between now and the trade deadline. But for now, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening, watching. I've been Zach Ciavolella. He's been Justin Crosby. Follow myself at Chavo NBA on Twitter, at Will Work for Sneaks for Justin Crosby. Thank you so much again for joining us. Let's go Sixers.